G'day, welcome back to the channel, and this video is just to preempt all the emails that are coming in. I've got so many emails coming asking me, when are you going to review the new DJI HD FPV system? Because it's just been released and there are already videos up there from Stinger Swarm, that's Kevin, from Oh My God, which is Tommy, from Rotor Riot and others. And I've only watched the 3 that I've just mentioned because I had to get this video out before my mailbox overflows again. So, well, I've started working on a video. Here's a little excerpt from it, which hopefully will be going up on RCModelReviews pretty soon. Watch this. G'day, welcome back to RCModelReviews, and big news this week. Of course, DJI have released their HD system, their HD FPV system. Goggles, transmitter, video transmitter, and RC receiver. And the price is pretty impressive. And there's been a few videos up already. The embargo was lifted, so other people have got their videos up. I think I saw Tommy, that's Oh My God, Tommy's got a really good video up. Suggest you go and have a look at that. Rotor Riot have got a video up. Of course, they're selling the product, so you know, bear that in mind when you watch the video. And you know, I'm sure there'll be other videos coming up. And today, of course, I'm going to show you what's in the box that DJI sent me. And we're going to talk about this video system, this HD game changer, they call it. Could be game changer, this new HD FPV system, which they claim has low latency, high range, and a lot of other stuff. But, well, you know what happens when people are confident in their product, when they think the product is really good, they send me it to look at, because I'm a bit of a cynical reviewer. I'm not selling anything. I'm not making money out of affiliate links. So I tend to take a little bit more of an objective look at this stuff when it comes out. So you've got to be pretty confident in your product if you're going to send it to me to review. So let's take a look at what DJI have sent me. Yeah, that's right, nothing. Didn't get a thing. Okay, so no, I didn't get anything from DJI, not unexpected. If I was DJI, I wouldn't send me anything either, because I'm not the demographic, I'm not the target market. I am not the freestyler, I'm not the racer, I'm not the guy that puts up fantastic FPV videos and gets lots of views from it. I review stuff and I do other things, but I'm not the great FPV freestyler and racer that this product is designed for. So it makes sense. DJI are going to send this to their target market, the influencers in their target market, which are the likes of Tommy and Rotor Riot and Kevin and who knows who else. So all these guys got advanced copies of this FPV system, and they're doing videos and showing us how it works and everything. And so I can only speak to what I've seen in those videos and what I can read from between the lines. But I have come up with some questions and some interesting points that I would like perhaps some of the people who do have the system to answer for everybody, because I'm sure we'd all want to know the questions I'm going to ask and the points I raise. But first of all, let's take a quick look at what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen those videos, are you living in a cave? Because they're everywhere. But basically we've got 3 components. We've got some video goggles that make you look like a bug man. We've got a radio controlled transmitter at $300. It's very expensive for what it does. And we've got an air unit, which is a camera and a little metal box with 2 antennas. And that basically replaces your FPV camera, your FPV video transmitter, and your radio controlled receiver. So it's pretty straightforward. And I've got to say right from the get-go, I know people will be saying, oh, you're going to be bitter because they didn't send you one. Hell no, that's not my job. My job is to be objective and to look at what facts we have. And I've got to say, from what I've seen of this product and the way it performs, it's brilliant. You know, fantastic. And I have to say, from a value perspective, it's cheaper than I'd have sold it. It is brilliant value. It's $1,000. It's $1,000. And if you were trying to get into FPV freestyle or racing, and you went out and you had to buy a decent transmitter, a decent video transmitter, decent camera, a high definition recording camera, and a decent set of goggles, you would have no change from $1,000. You may spend more than $1,000. So the value equation of the DJI gear is brilliant. It's fantastic for new entrants into the hobby. Why would you not go with this product? And I think basically Fat Shark and the other manufacturers who have been providing analog product should be quaking in their boots right now, because this does look like a game changer, with a few caveats which I'll raise later. So yeah, despite the fact they didn't send me one, I am certainly enthusiastic about this product. I think DJI has done the right thing all the way along. They did the right thing by not sending me one, because they had nothing to gain from sending me one. If you look at all the people who post these videos, are going, wow, fantastic. Why would you risk sending one to me who might find fault. So yeah, DJI did the corporate thing. They did the right thing. I'm happy with that. If I was a DJI shareholder, I'd be mighty pissed off if they sent one to me. But moving along, okay, we've got the three components. The goggles look good. In fact, the people using them said, wow, they're really, really good. So they're probably good. Light issues from the side, that's easily solved with some extra foam. They make you look like a dork, but you look like a dork anyway if you fly FPV. The air unit is really well priced, $100 for the little metal box and $59 for the camera. As I say, pricing is not an issue. The transmitter, the radio control transmitter, I'm not so sure about, because for $300 you can buy a pretty damn good FreeSky setup. And this thing is purpose-built for quad flying, whether it be racing or freestyle, or even, I mean, I see where DJI is coming from with this. And if you look at their little trailer video, it's getting the cinematic stuff. I've been doing, actually, it's really quite annoying because this is the flying I've been doing, you know, getting the great shots, the scenic shots, and using a mini quad like you would use a Phantom 4 or a Mavic, but with more flexibility and the ability to get into tighter places and get shots you can't get with those machines. That's the kind of flying I really like to do. So I am a target market for this piece of kit. I'll probably have to end up buying one. I'll mortgage the wife, because I've got a wife now, I can mortgage her, or put her on the streets working, and I'll buy one of these units because they're just, you know, they look really, really good. So everything seems to gel. Now, the videos we've seen so far are pretty good. If I had any complaints, and you know me, I've got to have a complaint, I'd say that the 1080p recorded footage is pretty meh. You know, it's certainly not GoPro Hero 7 footage. You can tell it's just not that caliber. It just doesn't look as good. And of course that's probably in a part because a lot of the people who fly freestyle tend to fly 2.7K, and then they scale in editing or whatever, or YouTube scales it to 1080. So they're working with better footage to start with. And as some of them have said, they haven't color graded the footage and so forth. So it will look better as people spend more time working on the footage, but it's not the highest quality HD recording camera. Having said that, of course, you're saving the weight of a GoPro Hero 7, so that's a big bonus. Yeah, I could live with that. It's no worse than my Runcam split footage, and I love my Runcam split. So there you go. I'm getting a 4K split type camera to review, and we'll see how that works out. Maybe it'll be better, I don't know. That's another video. But anyway, I found some things here that I wanted to talk about. The first one is, speaking of camera. Speaking of cameras, the camera with the DJI system is a 4:3 sensor, which gives you a choice of either square 1080p or 16:9, which is cropped out of the sensor to give you 1080p. So it's not SuperView. I mean, that's the big thing. It doesn't appear to be SuperView. Oh my goodness. Now, if you're like me, you've gone down to the park, or you've gone down somewhere and you've had a really good, burn a few packs, sometimes literally, and you think, wow, that was great. I was flying really well. I was flying fast. And you get home and you put the SD card in your computer and you go, how pedestrian is that? When you look at your footage, if you're not using a GoPro on SuperView, if you look at your footage from your Runcam or your whatever, your Foxeer box or whatever you've got on your quad, when you look at that footage without SuperView, it looks totally pedestrian, because SuperView gives that illusion of speed. The side of the picture whizzes past really quickly because it's a non-linear view of the world. And that's why Mr. Steele and Tommy and Kevin and all the others, that's why they look like they're flying so damn fast, when in fact, they're not quite flying as fast as it appears. Now, when I reviewed the Runcam 5, I showed the difference between standard 1080 footage or 1440p footage and SuperView footage. And I used a piece of software you can download off the internet. Here's a little, I'm doing a video on this now, which shows you how to do this with this free software, so you can make your own SuperView footage from otherwise 4:3 footage. And so what I'm thinking is that DJI, being very quick to respond usually to the market demands, I'm sure they'll come out with a firmware update or that separate utility that lets you turn 4:3 footage into SuperView, because all the top freestylers will demand it. They will want it. Otherwise, what we'll see is people flying with the DJI system, but still with a GoPro Hero 7 on board because they want the SuperView footage. So maybe DJI won't respond. They'll say, well, if you want SuperView, oh no, buy our Osmo action camera. But that doesn't have SuperView either. So yeah, they'll respond. But they can't put SuperView in because that's the GoPro product. It's a GoPro thing, and it's patented and trademarked and protected in 1,000 different ways. So what will they do? They cannot deliver SuperView. It's going to be interesting. Anyway, as I say, I've got a video coming up. I'll show you how to do it yourself. Do it yourself. Really easy. Now, the next thing on my list is, yes, compatibility. Now, in a perfect world, everyone would rush out tomorrow or whenever it's available and buy the system and use it, and we'd all be using the DJI Digital System, and we'd have 8 channels, so 8 people could fly at the same time. We could all fly at 4K, because that's the claimed range, 4 kilometers, huge range. Only if you don't live in the EU, I'll get onto that later. But 4K of range, fantastic, wonderful world, HD, we'd all be happy. But this is the real world where we don't always end up being happy. And we're going to have situations where you go to a bando or you go to a race meet and you've got 1 or 2 people with DJI on the digital and everyone else is analog. Now, how are they going to get on? How compatible are they? Because the DJI system is using quite a bit of power by the look of it. Now, they're claiming a 4K range on 5.8 gigahertz. You don't get 4K on 5.8 gigahertz running 100 milliwatts of power or 200 milliwatts of power. You've got to run a lot of power, and one figure I've seen mentioned is 700 milliwatts. That's a lot of power. So if you've got a 700 milliwatt video transmitter DJI here, and just a few yards away you've got someone with a pair of fat sharks with an analog receiver, are they going to get blitzed even if they're on different channels? We don't know. No, I haven't seen anyone check that yet. That's something I would find very important to find out. And conversely, if you are the guy at the field with the DJI goggles and everyone else is using analog on adjacent channels, are you going to find your picture or your image compromised in any way? Is your frame rate going to fall through the floor? Is it going to pixelate? What's going to happen? These are questions we really need answered, because analog and digital will have to coexist for some time to come, until everyone goes all analog or until people say this DJI system's crap. So one way or the other, there's going to be a coexistence. We need to know the degree at which these systems can coexist, so that at flying fields and clubs, we can have procedures in place to make sure that people don't upset other people by using the wrong gear at the wrong time. And what's next? Oh yeah, now this whole thing about latency. This is going to be a really interesting issue. In a nutshell, latency is the delay between when a photon hits the sensor on the camera and a corresponding photon hits the back of your eyeball, the retina, to say something's happened, right? So all video systems have latency. It's just a fact, because we're packaging stuff up into frames. So we're taking a picture and we're breaking it up into pixels, and then we're taking those pixels and we're basically sending them down a spout, and then they're being reconstituted at the other end. There's a delay involved in all doing that. And because the frames are sent basically one at a time, there is a minimum of 1 frame of delay involved in most systems. And at 30 frames a second, 1 frame of delay is, I don't know, I'd have to work it out. Anyway, it's milliseconds of delay. And also cameras have delay as well, because a lot of the work happens in the camera. So for example, when the first CCD cameras came out, they had a latency of about 18 to 20 milliseconds. From memory, I could be wrong. This is the HS1177s or whatever they were. And we flew with those and we were happy. And then I recall one day that a board camera came out, had the Sony FEO5 chipset, which was a fancy computer chipset, and it did all sorts of image processing and gave you fantastic wide dynamic range. And everybody was raving about this new camera with this new chipset. So I got one and I put it in a mini quad, and it was terrible. It was horrible because it had 45 milliseconds of latency. I was used to flying with under 20 milliseconds, and suddenly 45 milliseconds, it was almost unflyable because I was way behind the curve. When I got to a gate and time to turn, when my goggles said you're right at the turning point, my quad was already many yards beyond that point because of the delay between the image coming from the camera back to my goggles. So it was very difficult to fly with that high latency for the first pack. And it wasn't even the full first pack. By the time I'd got to the end of the first pack, my brain had already adjusted and I was able to start shooting gaps and things, because my brain worked out that I have to start putting control inputs in sooner, because I have to anticipate the fact that my quad is actually further ahead than it is. And the human brain's a wonderful thing. Mine, perhaps not so good now, but the average person's brain's really good. It can adapt very quickly to changes in latency. But we're talking about over a period of a pack or two, not instantly. It takes a while to get it back in the groove and the flow. So yeah, and then when I went back from the 45 millisecond camera back to my sub 20 millisecond camera, I had the reverse problem. I was turning too soon, and because things were happening more quickly. But then again, within a pack, I was back to normal. So you can adapt, So the DJI system claims to have 28 milliseconds of latency, which is it's a good acceptable figure. It's not as good as some of the best analog systems. I think that has to be acknowledged. And I'm doing a video. I've started doing a video called which I'm going to call glass to glass, because we need to quantify exactly how much latency is involved in modern FPV systems. So I have set up a little jig with a light source and a light sensor, and between those two there's going to be the camera, the video transmitter, video receiver, and the goggles. I'm going to measure the time it takes for a change in lighting at the camera to be reflected at your eyeballs, and we're talking milliseconds here. You know, this is a very short period of time, so I'm going to do it electronically. I've got the oscilloscope involved. I've already started doing this experiment, setting it up, and I will try and quantify, so we have a pretty good idea of what we're getting now with existing goggles, existing cameras, existing video links. What kind of latency are we actually experiencing? Now, a number of sites, a number of channels like Mario, RC Shim, has done a very good job of quantifying the latency in cameras, but they're not the only part of the link. The goggles also have a built-in latency, and no one seems to have been quantifying that. So I'm going to quantify the entire glass-to-glass latency for a whole range of different setups. That's coming up on RCModelReviews. Hopefully that'll be a useful video. Then we can put that into the context of the DJI latency, claimed to be 28 milliseconds. Is it much more? Is it much less? We don't know until we do the measurements. We just have to take them at their word. But one thing that worries me a little bit about DJI's latency is that it's not fixed. It's variable. Now, as I said, I found it took me a whole pack to adjust, going from under 20 milliseconds of latency to 45 milliseconds of latency when I changed cameras, and going back the other way. So you can adapt, but you can't adapt instantly. And the problem I perhaps see with the DJI system, if you're a top-notch racer or you're a kick-ass freestyler, then you may have difficulty as the system changes latency on the fly. And we saw that in Kevin's video. And also, I think in the Rotor Riot video, as the signal got weaker, or they went behind objects, the frame rate dropped. And Kevin acknowledged the frame rate dropped. He said, I don't know if there's any difference in latency, but the frame rate's dropped. Well, I'm sorry, you can't have a lower frame rate without a higher latency, because if you think about it, your eyes see a picture, a frame of video, and then if you've got, say, 10 frames a second, it's going to be 100 milliseconds before the next frame arrives. So if the frame rates drop down to 10 frames a second because of the noise and interference, you've got a latency of 100 milliseconds. So if the frame rate goes up to 100 frames per second, you've got a latency of 10 milliseconds, all else being excluded. So frame rate and latency are intimately related. So when he said the frame rate was dropping, he was also getting a much higher latency. That makes it very hard. If the latency changes mid-flight, it's very hard to control, because your brain is expecting one latency and it's getting another. So I think if you're a top-end freestyler, you may have trouble shooting some of the gaps and pulling out before you hit the ground. If you're in an environment where the signal strength is going to change dramatically, so the DJI system will respond by altering its frame rate to compensate. Because with digital systems, the slower you send the data, the more range you get effectively. And so what DJI is obviously doing is, as the signal link gets weaker, it's slowing down the data flow by reducing the frame rate so that the packets still get through. But of course that means that things will be laggy as you get into the limits of range, or even if you get a sudden burst of interference from an external source, or you go behind a tree, the frame rate could change slightly. And if you're shooting tiny gaps, you may notice it. I don't know, I don't have one, can't tell. But the top end guys may notice it, and this may come into importance when it comes to racing. Because racing, if you look at like Thomas from BMS Web, the guy is a machine, he's a robot. His movements are millisecond accurate. So if you've got an extra 5 or 10 milliseconds coming and going, it's going to really screw your game up. At least I imagine it would. We don't know, and we have to wait and see. One of the big things is this is going to be a wait and see game. We don't know. It's early days. I don't have one. Some people do. At the moment, there's the honeymoon period, as I like to call it. What's happened is everyone who's got one of these things loves it. Because who wouldn't? Who wouldn't love to have a full 720p HD picture in your eyeballs when you're flying a mini quad? Oh, brilliant. So there's natural human nature. When you're in love, you overlook the shortfalls. Love sees no fault. So you love these things. And if there are a few faults, like, gosh, that's a bit hard going through there because the latency increased, you tend to put it at the back of your mind because you're having so much fun and it's such a great experience. In a few months' time, when people have got over the honeymoon period and they are now a little bit more objective in their views, we may get a slightly different vibe back. I mean, good example, the Conex system. One of the first HD FPV systems designed for mini quads. When it first came out, some of the same people who are now raving about the DJI system were very, very complimentary towards the Conex system. Wow, what a great clear picture. This is fantastic, blah, blah, blah. But now, where's Conex? Well, the little faults that at the time were minor niggles once you've been using it a while, you realize these are actually game changers. These are deal breakers. You know, we don't want a picture that freezes for 3 seconds at a time when you're trying to shoot a gap that big. It doesn't work. So I tend to think that anyone thinking of buying the DJI system, if you are really concerned about that purchase, you might want to wait a while. We can't buy them anyway now, but wait a while until the honeymoon period's worn off and people are giving more objective feedback. I'd love to have given you more objective feedback, but I don't have one, and I'm not surprised. But at the moment, bear in mind, when you're looking at the reviews and the sort of coverage on YouTube, you've got people like Rotor Riot, hey, great crowd, you know, they're doing their best to be objective, but they are selling the goggles and the whole setup. They're selling it, right? So they've got skin in the game. If you buy it, they make money. You got to remember that. And so there's always and Rotor Riot quite open about it. I mean, they have all their products and all their swag and everything. So they are a business designed to separate you from your cash in return for good quality products. So they are out there pitching this thing, and they are not going to overhype any shortfall, failings it may have. They're going to focus on the positive. I think Tommy, I'm not sure if he's got an affiliate link in his description. I know that Kevin's got an affiliate link, I think, in his description. He's tied in with the Rotor Riot as well, isn't he? So there's a lot of these people are going to be making a bit of coin if you buy a system clicking on their links. That's fine. I've got no problem with that. They don't claim to be totally objective reviewers like I do, so they're welcome to do that. And to be honest, in YouTube today, you've got to do it to survive. If I didn't have my Patreon supporters, I couldn't survive. So these people are doing what they have to do, and I've got no problem because the information they're giving us is brilliant. We wouldn't have got it otherwise. So that's fantastic. So good on Tommy, good on Kevin, good on Rotor Riot. Thank you for all your information. But we still just have to be a little bit careful when we bring it in, and so, latency is something that most of them have played down. And I noticed, like, for example, Kevin said he didn't notice any latency, but there were some telltale signs of latency in his video. Now, when I get a new setup with a new camera and new goggles, whatever, to determine whether it's got a different latency to what I've used before, I do a roll in a mini quad. Do a roll, because this is a really good test. Rolls are really quick, so they happen in tens or a couple hundred milliseconds to do a roll in a mini quad. So latency really shows up. And if you are using a system with a different latency, then when you do a roll, you'll probably, instead of coming out doing a complete 360, you'll come out short or you'll come out late, because your brain is used to working with a fixed amount of latency, and it monitors the horizon. And when your horizon gets to a certain angle, based on your previous experience, then you release the control, because your brain knows that the craft's going to continue to appear to rotate, because the latency means that when you see the horizon like that, it's already like that. So you've already tuned your mind to that latency. If the latency changes, then you will either release the control too soon or release it too late, depending on whether the latency is higher or lower. And I noticed when Kevin did one of his first rolls here, he didn't come out level. And then he corrected later, right? And then he did a flip afterwards. Same thing happened. He stopped flipping too soon. And as with the roll, he didn't do a full 360 with the flip. He had to come down or bring it back into line. So I'm not saying the latency was worse or better, but the latency was different to what he's used to flying. The rates could have had an effect too, but I tend to think latency has more of an effect than the rates in this particular situation. So the DJI system didn't have the same latency as what he's been flying before. That showed up only at the very beginning of the flight, because as I said, the brain adapts, and his brain adapted to the different latency, and after that he's fine. His maneuvers, perfect, great, fantastic. So, and of course, being a really good flyer, he'd probably adapt much more quickly than I would. I took a whole pack. So your brain adapts to latency changes, but the concern is that, as I say, if the latency is changing during the flight, your brain can't keep up. So you're going to have problems. If you've got 1 minute you got 28 milliseconds, next minute you got 35 milliseconds. That's going to cause issues if you're cutting really fine gaps and things. I think this is what I believe, but only time will tell whether this becomes a real issue. So yeah, that's the thing. And the other thing is, in the Rotor Riot video, they got hit by, they had a ghost stick, a ghost branch. And we know what ghost branches are. You're flying along and suddenly, there's a branch out of nowhere, because it's a very thin, straggly branch. And by the time you see it, you've already hit it. Now with HD, you would expect to see that much sooner. And they weren't traveling particularly fast, but they did hit a ghost branch. So was it that they didn't see it, which I don't think would be the case, because you could see it on the HD, and the HD and the goggles was what you're looking at, right? So you could see it plenty of time. Or was it that by the time the ghost branch appeared, the latency was sufficiently long, they'd already hit it. So there was no avoiding it. I don't know. Who knows? These are minor things, very minor things. As I say, my overall view of this package is, let me summarize for you. In the end, after this great amount of waffling and prevaricating, I think it's a kick-ass system. Based on what I've seen, I think it's a kick-ass system. I think it's got a few issues, which probably questions need to be answered, and there may be some issues that need to be addressed. But DJI has a great track record of updating their stuff very regularly, too regularly sometimes. And that means that if there are issues, I'm sure they will address them. They're a big company, they've got the resources to do that. It's not like some backyard company started up and they'll probably fold if they have problems. No, DJI is there in the long run, and this will be a core part of their business, because for the cinema, for the movie industry and so forth, this opens all sorts of new doors. And so I think this is going to be a really big product for them. But the market actually isn't going to so much be you and I, freestylers and quad racers. It's going to be the industry, the movie industry, the advertising industry. That's where the real money, the sports industry, this is where the money's going to come from. So that's where I think, that's why they've done this, because they know that, you know, recreational mini quad flyers, it's not that many of us. Really, there aren't. Have you seen the membership numbers for the FPV Freedom Coalition? It's very, very tiny, and that's America. So we're a very small number, but the value of the industry where these things can be used, mini quads now can be used to get real-time HD footage, is enormous. So that's where they're banking, that's what they're banking on. So yeah, I think it's a kick-ass product. I think the pricing point is brilliant. I would have probably priced it at least $1,300, $1,299. They've done it at $1,000. Brilliant, fantastic. I think the performance that we've seen from the people who've flown it is exceptional, absolutely exceptional. It may be a little overhyped in areas, but you've got to expect that. This is marketing. This is a new product. You've got to hype it up, right? Get people's expectations there. I think if I was going into the hobby, if I didn't have any investment in existing radio gear or FPV gear, I would jump at this. I'd leap at it. Why not? Why not? This seems to be such a brilliant deal. If you have any hesitation, if you're not too sure though, you can't really afford to lose the money, just wait a couple of months. Wait a couple of months and see what happens after the honeymoon period expires. I still think we'll be very happy campers. I really do. Now, I'm not so sure that this is going to be appearing in the GP series or the real hardcore racing. I'm not so sure that's going to be the case, because, as I say, the variable latency could be an issue, and also possibly the compatibility with existing analog gear. You might have to run a separate class if there's a clash between analog and digital. So we'll see what happens there. And the top freestylers, for the time being, they're going to keep putting that GoPro 7 on the front of their machines to get the really good footage. And I also tend to wonder if the really top-end ones might find also the latency, especially things like bandos, where you're getting constantly variable signal strengths. You might go behind a building and, you know, a couple of feet of concrete, and suddenly your frame rate drops. And you're shooting a little gap, and suddenly now you are 40 milliseconds behind the ball instead of 28 milliseconds behind the ball. That becomes very difficult to deal with. But I may be just talking through a hole in my head. Don't know. So there you go. My thoughts. You asked for them, you got them. And as I say, there's a full video coming up on RCModelReviews where I'll go over some of these points. And I'll also do that glass-to-glass comparison. And if DJI want to send me a unit to do some techie reviews on, rather than just flippity-flip in the sky, I'm happy to accept it. They did offer me some stuff once, years ago, when they're trying to quit their Phantom 3 stocks, when they bought the Phantom 4 out. And I said no, because it was my target audience. And I don't say yes. I get offered a lot of free stuff and I say no, because there's no point in me accepting it, because it's not going to be of interest to you guys. This would be. So if they offered me one of these, I would accept it, because I know you guys would want to know what I would find out. So there you go. Thanks for watching, guys. Questions, comments to the usual place. Watch RC Model Reviews, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Did you see the mid-roll ad in this video? No, you didn't, did you? Thank my Patreon supporters for that. No mid-rolls, just the one at the end, the beginning, and probably one at the end, I don't know. There you go. And remember, flying model aircraft's not a crime. Don't make it one. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now.